They say Earth still spins below us. I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it in years. Not clearly, anyway. Just a blur through the radiation-stained windows of Halion Station, like a dying ember flickering behind dirty glass. Funny how we used to call it the blue planet. Now it's gray. Quiet. Poisoned. I floated along the cracked spine of Sector G, my boots clipped to the old mag rail that no longer worked. The air was thin here, recycled too many times, and it tasted like rust and regret. Every few meters, lights flickered, half dead, like everything else on this station. Halion was once a marvel, an orbital habitat built for research, diplomacy, hope. Now it was just a leaking tin can, patched together with scrap and duct tape, filled with ghosts and people pretending they weren't. I was here to scavenge, though the official term was Resource Reclamation Technician. Sounds more honorable, doesn't it? Makes it easier to sleep at night. My target was a collapsed communications pod from the old AI research wing. Most people avoided this section. It had been shut down since the Omega Flare, the cosmic storm that had fried most of Earth's surface 2 decades ago and turned the sky into a killing field. The station's central AI, Echo, had gone silent around the same time. Just vanished. Like it knew the end had come. I found the pod crumpled in on itself like a soda can, wedged into a twisted beam. The access panel sparked as I touched it, giving my glove a quick jolt. "Nice to see you're still angry," I muttered. Took me 15 minutes to pry the core out. It was cracked and humming faintly, like something dreaming in its sleep. These old AI cores were built tough, though. If any piece of Echo had survived, it might be buried inside. I was halfway back when I heard the voice. You know, most people prefer not to be alone in places like this. I spun, hand reaching instinctively for the wrench on my belt. Mira stood in the corridor, leaning against the bulkhead like she'd been waiting for me. Same scrappy engineer's jacket, same half-smirk. Her left arm, the prosthetic one, clicked softly as she crossed it over her chest. "I like the quiet," I said, unclipping from the rail. "You like not being noticed. That's different." She walked closer, eyes flicking to the core in my hands. "What did you find?" "Not sure yet. Maybe part of Echo. Maybe junk." I paused. "Probably junk." She raised an eyebrow. "You don't look like someone who crawled through dead zones for junk." I shrugged, even though she was right. I'd been chasing whispers. Rumors. Old logs. For months now, pieces of something bigger had been falling into place. The name Eidolon kept surfacing in corrupted archives and black market data trades. A project nobody would talk about. A ship, maybe. A sanctuary. A myth. Mira was the only one I trusted enough to loop in. Maybe because she didn't care about glory or saving the world. She cared about breaking the rules and sticking it to authority. And that was good enough for me. Back at her workshop, a narrow crawlspace behind the hydroponics waste tanks, we hooked the core into her patchwork decryptor. Hacked together from old Martian telecom arrays and fragments of Earthside satellites. It hummed like a dying bee but worked miracles when it wanted to. Lines of corrupted code danced across the screen. Static. Fragmented language. Partial logs. Then something. A voice. Glitchy but clear. Eidolon containment breach, unauthorized override, encryption sequence TTH-17 engaged. Access terminated by directive of. The recording cut off with a sharp click. Mira and I stared at the screen. Silence stretched. "Tell me you heard that," I said. "I did," she said slowly. "And I've never heard that word used outside the deep archive." She tapped a few keys, tracing the log's metadata. Timestamp puts it just hours before the flare hit. I looked at the screen. Eidolon. It was real. And whatever it was, someone had locked it down just as the world burned. My stomach turned cold. Myra's voice dropped. "If this is what I think it is, you just found something people would kill to bury." She wasn't wrong. In Halion Station, knowledge was a dangerous currency. Anything outside the official records could be labeled subversive. Dangerous. Worth disappearing over. Which meant we had 2 choices. Let it go, or follow the trail. I looked down at the core, still humming in my hands. I'd spent years running from my past, blaming myself for the SHIELD project, for Earth. But maybe this was something I could do right. I met Myra's eyes. "We follow it." She nodded once. "Then we'd better not sleep." And just like that, the dark began to feel a little less silent. A little less dead. Because for the first time in 20 years, I had something more than guilt. I had a lead. I should have known better than to sleep near the upper ring. The lights were too clean up here, the metal too polished. Everything smelled like recycled ozone and cold steel, which meant only one thing: security had been through recently. No one liked the upper levels except the suits and the guards. But I needed to tap into the solar relay lines above the old greenhouse dome. That meant risking being seen. And I was seen. 2 black-shelled drones drifted out of nowhere and caught me mid-climb, halfway to the relay panel. I didn't run. I didn't fight. I just raised my hands and smiled like a man who'd just been caught stealing air. One of them zapped me with a stun pulse anyway. Overkill. Now, I sat under the artificial glow of Commander Hoda Van's office, wrists bound, head still ringing, with 2 security officers standing behind me like bored statues. She entered without fanfare. Not stomping, not pacing, no need for intimidation. Hoda didn't do that. Her silence was scarier than any loud voice. The door slid open, and she stepped in like a ghost in full uniform, black-gray armor hugging her frame, short silver hair brushed back without a single strand out of place. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, locked on mine. I didn't blink. "Dave Rylander," she said, voice smooth like oil on water. "You really should avoid restricted sectors." I tilted my head, gave her my best deadpan. I was looking for better Wi-Fi. She didn't smile. "Of course not. I'm told you were attempting to access the solar relay grid. Care to explain why?" I shrugged. Maybe I just enjoy high-voltage death wishes. Still no smile. She walked around the desk slowly, every movement calculated, like a machine ticking through protocols. She sat, folded her hands on the surface, and leaned forward just slightly. "You're not a scavenger," she said. "You're still thinking like a scientist. That's dangerous." Funny. I thought thinking was encouraged. It's not thinking that gets people killed, Rylander. It's thinking the wrong things. There it was, the edge beneath her calm. A warning not to prod deeper. I looked her straight in the eye. "You've been reading my files." "Of course." She nodded. "Ex-solar physicist. Project Halcyon. Stellar shielding tech. Promoted, discredited, disappeared. And now here you are, crawling in ductwork like the rest of the desperate rats." That stung more than I expected. I didn't show it. "You left out the part where I watched the sky burn from orbit," I said. A pause. For just a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. Not sympathy. Something colder. Memory, maybe. Hoda had been on Mars during the Omega flare. She'd watched Earth burn from a telescope lens. "Earth's dead," she said flatly. "And the only thing that matters now is order. Stability. Which means people like you, digging into ghosts, are a liability." I leaned forward as far as the restraints let me. "Let's stop pretending you brought me here over a power line," I said. "You know what I found? You know what was in that AI core?" Her fingers twitched. Tiny movement. Barely there. But I saw it. "You found encrypted data from a defunct system. Corrupted logs. Speculation. Project Eidolon." She didn't move. Didn't blink. The silence stretched so long I heard my own pulse thudding in my ears. "That name," she finally said, voice lower now, "hasn't been spoken in over 20 years. I leaned back slow. Let the weight of it settle between us. "You buried it," I said. "Why?" She stood suddenly. Too fast. I felt the guards behind me tense. My own pulse spiked. But Hoda just walked to the viewport behind her desk and stared out. The curve of the earth below shimmered in shadow, still beautiful, even dead. "Because false hope kills faster than starvation," she said. The silence returned, heavier now. The guards said nothing. I waited, uncertain if she'd order my execution or offer me tea. Then she turned. "You're going to forget what you found. If you care about the people still alive on this station, you'll bury it again and walk away. And if I don't," she came close, bent slightly, her breath cold and sharp, "then you'll be the match that burns down what little future we have left." Then she walked out, leaving me alone with 2 silent guards and a million more questions than I started with. I should have felt afraid. Instead, I felt alive, because now I knew for certain Eidolon was real. And whatever it was, she was terrified of it. Time to find out why. I never liked silence in Halion. It always meant something had gone wrong. A failing generator. A broken seal. A section sealed off because the oxygen recyclers gave up. Silence didn't exist naturally on the station. There was always some background noise. The groan of metal under pressure, the whir of fans, the hiss of vents bleeding air like the station was slowly exhaling its last breath. So when Mira and I stepped into the undergrid and heard nothing but our own footsteps echoing through the narrow, rust-stained tunnel, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. We're ghosts down here, Mira whispered beside me. Her voice cracked with static through the masked comms. Forgotten corridors, forgotten people. Speak for yourself, I muttered. I was never worth remembering. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a low-ceilinged chamber tangled with old wiring and spiderwebs of frost. It looked like no one had been here in decades. A cracked service panel flickered weakly, green light pulsing like a dying heart. This was once part of Halien's AI archive core, long before they locked everything behind firewalls and fear. We were here to find the voice of a machine that had been silenced when the Earth burned. Power's low, Mira said, brushing dust off an interface screen. She was already pulling tools from her pack, fingers moving like she was born to disassemble the past. Give me 5 minutes. I nodded and crouched by an old access terminal. The casing was burned around the edges, scorch marks like something had shorted violently. Whoever shut this place down didn't do it gently. While she worked, I stared into the dark. My thoughts slipped back, uninvited, to that day. Earth had been bright one last time. Just before the Omega flare tore through the magnetosphere, you could still see oceans from orbit, blue and breathing. We thought the shield array would hold. I thought the math was solid. It wasn't. And now here I was, crawling through dead data for a miracle that probably didn't exist. A sudden burst of light blinked to life from Myra's terminal, breaking me out of the memory. We're in, she said. Power's holding. Barely. Help me bypass the AI lockout. I slid beside her and tapped the cracked glass. The interface responded sluggishly, lines of code flickered, rearranged themselves, then stabilized into an old Halien V-core shell. One of the earliest AIs the station used. Crude but functional. A synthetic voice rasped to life. Not words, just a garbled hum, like a throat trying to remember how to speak. Language core damaged, I muttered. It's trying to boot, but it's stuck. Give it a nudge, Mira said. I typed in a series of bypass commands. The terminal hesitated, then the screen flashed white. Lines of data flowed rapidly, then froze on a single line of text. Project Eidolon, access restricted, last query, launch vector validation. My pulse jumped. That's it, I said. It knew about the launch path. The vector. Mira leaned closer, eyes scanning the readout. There's more. Look, it's cross-referencing with solar orbit drift and station telemetry. It knew exactly where Eidolon was parked. I swallowed. So where is it? She tapped a key. Another line appeared, but this one wasn't coordinates. It was a cipher. Long, segmented, like DNA code, but too structured to be random. What the hell is this? I said. It's not a location, Mira said slowly. It's an encryption key. It's hiding the real location behind a quantum algorithm. So we need a decryption AI. She nodded. A good one. And fast. The code's decaying. This data's corrupted. If we don't stabilize it, we lose everything. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind us. We froze. I turned slowly, hand inching toward the shock baton I'd stolen from a maintenance locker 3 nights ago. In the dim light, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Young. Lean. Hair a mess. Big goggles over his eyes. Don't shoot, the kid said, raising both hands. Name's Run. I've been listening since you activated the core. I didn't lower the baton. Listening how? He grinned, unafraid. I built a piggyback script. Used the old comm relay in this sector. I heard everything about Eidolon. Mira gave me a glance. I could read her thought clearly. Great. And why exactly are you here? I asked. I want in, Rin said simply. I've been hearing whispers about Eidolon for years. I know tech, I know language cores, and I know how to fix that corrupted file before it disappears into digital dust. He stepped forward. I'm not here to turn you in. I'm here because I believe it's real. And I think you do too. I looked at Mira. She looked at the terminal, then at Run, then back to me. Well, she said. What do you think, Professor? I sighed, slowly lowering the baton. I think we've just invited a ghost into the machine. And just like that, the silence was broken. The station always creaked just before the power grid shifted. That low, bone-deep groan, the kind that made you think the whole shell of Halion was sighing under the weight of its own failure. I stood in the dark, listening to it, one hand pressed against the cold metal wall. In that silence, it almost felt like the station was alive. Dying but alive. Mira was asleep, her jacket pulled over her face against the humming chill of the forgotten sub-bay we were holed up in. Ren sat cross-legged on the floor, blue light from his holopad flickering across his face, shadows dancing like ghosts on his cheeks. I couldn't sleep. There was a voice in my head, not whispering, not yelling, just repeating. The last log from my mentor, Kesai. They buried it, Dave. They didn't want it to be found. Not by them. Not by anyone. He looked like a husk in the vid. Older, thinner, like time had melted the man I once knew. It wasn't just the years. It was the guilt. And I knew it because it matched my own. We had built the eyes of the solar shield array together, back when we still thought we could save Earth. Now he was gone. Earth was gone. And maybe we were next. I rubbed my face and knelt beside Ren. You get anything from the last string? I asked quietly. Ren didn't look up. His fingers danced over the pad, eyes scanning something only he could decipher. Yeah, and you're not gonna like it. That was never a good start. Talk to me. Ren exhaled through his nose. Your buddy Kesai? He didn't just hide Eidolon's coordinates. He also scrambled the route to access them with a quantum-locked cipher. The key was split into 3 fragments, and we only have 2. I stared at the pad, as if squinting hard enough would make a third piece appear. And the last one? I asked. Ren hesitated. Last known location was, admin access vault. Sector 17 Gamma. That's command deck. My stomach turned. That was Hoda's territory. I glanced toward Mira. She hadn't stirred, but I could see her fingers twitching beneath the jacket. She was dreaming. Or remembering. Same thing, really. We can't get near Gamma, I said more to myself than Ren. Too many cams, full patrols, biometric gates. Ren looked at me sideways. Unless we get someone with access. I knew where this was going. And I hated it. No, I said flatly. But the idea had already sunk its hooks in. Later that cycle, when Mira woke up, we argued. Whispering at first, then low shouts muffled under the hum of dying fluorescence. She wanted to help me storm the command vault. Said she'd seen the inside of Hoda's security nest once, knew its layout from her old maintenance days. I told her it was suicide. You don't get to tell me what's worth dying for, Dave, she snapped. And just like that, I remembered the fire in her. Not just the defiance, but the faith. She actually believed in something. That Eidolon could mean more than just another broken promise. I get to say what's worth living for, I said quietly. She glared at me for a moment, then softened. Just a little. We're running out of both, she said. By the time we reached the outer hull shaft of Sector 17, the air tasted of rust and oil. Our suits hissed faintly as we slipped through the pressurized junction tubes, crawling like rats through the station's skeleton. Ren's voice came through the comm. You've got maybe 10 minutes before the next thermal cycle spikes the relay here. After that, it's gonna cook that shaft like a fusion grill. Lovely, Mira muttered. Remind me to slap you if we survive. We moved fast. When we reached the vault's perimeter, Mira popped the casing off a wall panel and began rewiring the entry locks. She worked in silence, her movements sharp, confident. I watched her, wanting to say something. Anything. But words felt like too much weight in the air. The hatch slid open with a soft click. We stepped into the admin vault. Everything inside gleamed like it hadn't aged a day. Cold blue lights, sealed doors, data spires humming with a sound I felt in my teeth. This was a place meant for control. The last vestige of order before chaos swallowed the rest of Halion. I found the interface node Kesai had marked. A thin black console inset into a wall, its screen pulsing faintly. I approached, hands shaking. The system scanned my face. Access partial. Then I entered Kesai's last code string. Access approved. The console blinked, then revealed a swirling star map. I leaned in, heart pounding. There. The final fragment of the coordinate stream. The location of Eidolon. But before I could say a word, an alarm screeched. Red lights flooded the room. Security breach, Mira hissed. They're onto us. I turned to run, but the door was already closing. Mira shoved me through the gap just in time. Then it slammed shut behind me, with her still inside. Mira. Her voice crackled through the wall. Go, Dave. You got what you came for. Get out of here. I slammed my fist against the door. No, I'm not leaving you. You have to. Then static. She was gone. I ran. I ran with the star map burned into my head and my heart splintered behind me. Ran through flickering halls and dead gravity wells, past faces I didn't know and didn't want to remember. Because all that mattered now was the ship. Eidolon. It wasn't a myth. It was real. And it was waiting. But I wasn't sure anymore whether it was waiting to save us or bury us in the stars. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up with dried blood in my hair and the taste of metal in my mouth. The cold floor of the old undergrid archive groaned beneath me as Halion Station shuddered above. Somewhere far off, I heard the creak of bulkheads and the slow exhale of dying machinery. Ren was snoring softly in a corner, his back against a rusted server bank, arms wrapped around his gear bag like it might disappear if he let go. Mira wasn't here. Her capture replayed in my head like a broken loop. Her scream, the clank of boots, the hiss of the stun baton, the way her eyes locked with mine before the door slammed shut between us. I could still hear her voice, calm and sharp. "Find the rest of it, Dave. No matter what." So I did what I do best, buried the grief, and got to work. Ren stirred awake when I started pulling cables from the backup drive we'd recovered during our run through the collapsed ventilation core. "You're not going to sleep?" he muttered, blinking at the dim blue light of the station's emergency strip. "No time. Hoda has Mira, and if she has half a brain, she's already scrubbing the local network." Ren rubbed his face and yawned. "What's the plan?" "Simple," I said, tapping the terminal. "Break into Halion's mainframe. Pull the complete Eidolon coordinates. Find the launch dock. Steal the ship." Ren blinked. "Simple. Sure." We left before sunrise cycle. I stuffed the AI fragments into a shoulder satchel and slipped a magnet pistol into my coat. We climbed up 6 levels using an old cargo shaft no one remembered. By the time we reached the outer rim of Sector 12, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from hope. It felt stupid to hope again. We slipped past patrol drones using Ren's pulse dampener, ducked into shadows, crawled through air ducts like rats. The whole station groaned around us, its bones buckling under years of neglect. We were ghosts, forgotten things in a dying place. When we reached the mainframe dome, the air felt different, sharper, colder. The entryway had long been sealed by official decree, marked as unstable. But I knew better. I helped build part of it. Ren cut the security loop while I fused the door open. The inside was still like a tomb. The walls pulsed with low blue light, glassy black panels stretching up into the dark. Dozens of data towers hummed, waiting for a purpose they hadn't served in years. "This place is ancient," Ren whispered. "Like pre-flare architecture." "Pre-flare and post-lies," I muttered. I walked to the console near the center and placed the AI core into its slot. It whirred softly as it booted, lights blinking like eyes slowly opening. The holographic interface flickered to life, casting pale light across the dust. The voice was faint, glitching. "Input verified. Welcome, Dr. Rylander." I flinched. It hadn't used that title in years. "Access Project Eidolon Archive," I said. A stream of code flooded the screen, and then a star map appeared. There it was. Not out past the asteroid belt. Not in deep Mars orbit like the legends claimed. The Eidolon was docked on a cloaked orbital cradle tethered behind Luna's dark side, cloaked with a gravitational shadow mask. A ghost ship, hiding in plain sight. Ren gasped. "It's real." But something was missing. The launch protocols. I tried to initiate a sequence, and the console flashed red. "Launch requires Protocol Sigma, 1 clearance. Biometric signature, Commander Hoda Van." I laughed. It came out more like a bitter cough. Of course it was her. Of course she was the lock on the door of our future. Ren looked at me. "So what now?" I stared at the blinking console. "We break Mira out. We steal the codes. And we take our shot." Silence filled the chamber. The kind of silence that presses into your skin and makes you feel smaller than you are. Ren didn't argue. As we walked back into the guts of the station, past flickering signs and broken cameras, something strange stirred in my chest. Not fear. Not guilt. Conviction. The coordinates were burned into my brain now. Eidolon was real. And no matter what Hoda thought she was protecting, order, safety, power, I was done hiding from the truth. I wasn't going to let humanity die in orbit, circling the corpse of a world we destroyed. The next time I faced Hoda, I'd be ready. And this time, she wouldn't have all the power. This time, I had something worth fighting for. They say silence is the loudest sound in space. That night, if you could even call it night on a station with no real sky, Halion felt quieter than usual. Like it knew something was about to end. Or maybe it was just me, standing in the shadows outside Detention Block 7, heart hammering like it wanted out of my chest. I had no plan B. No backup. No safety net. Just a borrowed gun, a half-corrupted launch code, and the woman who once saved my life locked behind a wall of reinforced glass. Mira. She'd been in there for 3 days. I imagined she was pacing, eyes burning with that stubborn fire of hers, dreaming of freedom and cursing my name for taking so long. Ren's voice crackled through my earpiece. "You're clear. Guards moving to the west corridor. 60 seconds, maybe less." "Copy," I whispered. My fingers trembled as I swiped the stolen access card. The door hissed open like a breath held too long. Cold recycled air spilled out. Inside, Mira sat on a cot, blood dried at the corner of her mouth, one eye swollen shut. But when she saw me, she didn't flinch. "Took you long enough," she muttered. I smiled, even as my throat tightened. "You look like hell." "Good," she said, standing. "Means I'm still alive. You bring the ship." I nodded. "Eidolon's real. It's docked in a cloaked hangar tethered to the lunar ring. We've got coordinates. We've got flight systems. What we don't have, yet, is the ignition code." Mira raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Hoda." "Exactly." She limped toward me. "Then let's go steal it from that tyrant." The hidden hangar was an old maintenance corridor disguised as a collapsed service tunnel. We reached it through what used to be the Halion Agricultural Bay, now a graveyard of rusted hydroponics and shattered grow lights. Ren met us near the entrance, his wiry frame bouncing with nervous energy. "You sure this is the place?" Mira asked, scanning the dark bulkhead ahead. Ren tapped his cracked tablet. "Positive. Cloaking field's weak. It's using 24-year-old tech. Once we power up the core, that thing's visible to every telescope in this system." We stepped inside, and there it was. Eidolon. It floated in the center of the dock like a dream wrapped in shadows, sleek, obsidian-hulled, shaped like a whale carved by light. Not big enough for the whole station, but big enough for a future. Big enough for those who still dared to believe in one. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then the alarms began. A red strobe flared above us. Klaxons howled. And I knew. Hoda had arrived. She walked through the main access gate like she owned the stars. Black coat whipping around her boots, flanked by 2 armed guards and the cold certainty of someone who thought she was right. "You really couldn't help yourself, could you?" she said, voice echoing through the hangar. "You found it. You opened Pandora's box." I stepped forward, chest tight. "This isn't about rebellion, Hoda. It's about survival." She raised her hand. Her guards didn't move, but they didn't lower their weapons either. "Survival," she spat. "You think launching that ship will save us? You'll tear this station apart. Riots. Collapse. The moment people believe there's a way out, everything here dies." "Everything here is already dying," I said quietly. Hoda's eyes met mine, sharp and cold. "And what about those who can't go? The sick? The old? The ones without connections? You'll save a few hundred and leave the rest to rot." Mira stepped beside me, blood still crusted on her temple. "That's not what this is. We'll come back. We'll rebuild." Hoda laughed, and it wasn't a kind sound. "You won't come back," she said. "You'll run, just like you did when Earth burned." That hit me like a slap. But I didn't flinch. "I didn't run," I said. "I survived. Like we all did. But I'm done surviving. I want to live." She pulled out a small chip from her coat. "This is the ignition key. You want it? Fine." She tossed it. I caught it. She nodded. "But just know, when you leave, the blood is on your hands. You make yourself a god. Or a monster." The hangar fell silent. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. No shots. No arrests. Just the unbearable weight of a choice passed like a torch. The launch sequence was simple. The decision was not. I stood at the command console of Eidolon, hand hovering over the ignition. Mira sat beside me, her fingers dancing across navigation. "Once we hit launch, we burn the dock tether," she said. "No coming back." Ren's voice came over comms. "Civilians are boarding. We've got 193. Mostly families. Some engineers. Few medics." I closed my eyes. I saw Earth, blackened and broken. I saw Halion, flickering like a dying bulb. I saw the stars. "Do it," I said. And then, for the first time in decades, we rose. Eidolon broke free of the dock like a bird uncaged. The cloak dropped. Lights across Halion flickered. And as we drifted past the station's outer edge, I saw them, faces pressed to portholes, watching us. Some angry, some hopeful, some crying, all silent. And then Halion was behind us. Only the stars ahead. I didn't know if we'd find a home. I didn't even know if we'd survive the journey. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel. I felt like maybe, just maybe, we weren't lost anymore. The stars outside the viewport were sharp and cold, pinpricks of light scattered across the endless black like distant fires burning on some forgotten shore. I sat alone in the quiet hum of the Eidolon's command deck, watching Earth slip away beneath us, its ragged blue and gray face fading into a hazy memory. It felt like watching the last ember of a dying fire flicker out in the night. Behind me, the low thrumming of the ship's engines was steady, relentless. The kind of noise that keeps you awake, reminds you that you're moving forward but never quite sure where. I reached out, tracing the cold metal edge of the console with my fingers, trying to ground myself in this strange new silence. We were survivors, yes. But survivors of what? Of a storm that tore our world apart, of choices that broke us, of hope barely clinging to life. I pulled the recording device closer, the small light blinking softly in the dim. It was time to speak, to tell anyone who might listen what had happened, why we had fled, and what waited for us beyond the stars. My name is Dave Rylander. I began, my voice rough but steady. We left Earth behind, our home, our grave. The world we knew was swallowed by fire and silence, and we were left to pick up the pieces. On Halion Station, we lived in shadows, waiting for a dawn that never came. But some of us refused to give up. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. The memories surged like a tide, Myra's fierce eyes, Hoda's cold command, the chaos and fear. All of it led to this moment, suspended between what was lost and what might still be found. This ship, Eidolon, is our ark. Not just a vessel of metal and engines, but a symbol of survival, of stubborn hope. We don't know where we're going. Maybe a new world waits for us out there, or maybe only endless night. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're heading somewhere. The silence pressed in around me again, heavier now. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as we jumped into faster-than-light travel, the ship shivering as it tore through the void. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine the possibilities, the worlds that might be waiting, the futures still unwritten. No matter what lay ahead, I knew this was our chance. To rise from the ashes, to build something new, or at least to keep trying. And in that dark, cold space, that was enough.